There's a big problem with the advice of copying the pro mastering engineers. Why are most pop masters, for example, way up in the -6 stratosphere? And why does Spotify ask for this -14 LUFS, -1 dB true peak target? Now in the past, I've said, usually when mastering one of my own tracks for a video, that for this purpose, we're gonna target -14 LUFS as we're distributing solely to streaming platforms. Now, I'm not going to say that again. He can do it.
So if you know something is only going to a streaming service and it's not going anywhere else, it's only uploading, so you're in charge of uploading it to a streaming service, you know that that streaming service is -14 LUFS like Spotify. Basically, you want to be mastering to -14 LUFS.
Streaky, he's been a mastering engineer for some 30 years and has said the same thing that I have, despite me not being a full-time mastering engineer. Do you know what? I do not master music full-time. Hands up to that. However, I did start mastering broadcasts for a radio station. There's a whole lot of context that goes with this streaming to -14 LUFS kind of scenario. We can call it ballpark loudness. Now, one of the biggest arguments that we constantly get is the top 100 tracks don't do it, or the top 100 mastering engineers don't conform to this loudness threshold. It's kind of true, but also massively not. Let me explain. So you would be correct to surmise that many tracks go above and beyond -14 LUFS. In fact, some popular tracks even go as hard as -5, which frankly almost always takes all of the dynamic out of the track. But that can be the goal. Last year, which was 2022, the top 25 most streamed tracks, all but one, were above -14 LUFS. So music is still being mastered way louder than -14 LUFS, and we're going to explore in a little bit as to how we're constantly getting to that. Now, I'm lucky enough that I can DM Mike Cave and he will get back to me. He is the person who taught me a whole bunch about mastering. He has mastered everyone from Lewis Capaldi through to KRS-One and definitely knows his stuff. I sort of get it because there is definitely a loudness sweet spot with most genres that is above the threshold of most platforms. But I'm seeing some mastering engineers proud to be at -6, mentioning no names. Personally, I'm still a fan of dynamic range, and to be honest, so are 99% of my clients. The 1% tend to get it once I explain. There is the odd track that suits being super loud, but that's more of a production, a taste decision. And even when Mike is mastering for extremely loud and upfront pop tracks, he generally goes for around -9. Sent me a further message to clarify this. Yeah, I agree, Scott. I reckon most of my pop masters tend to be around -9, and they always stand up well on all platforms. But when mastering music that's not going to be in the pop stratosphere, well, we dial it back a lot and dynamic range is preferred. With that said though, if you're going for dubstep and you want to try and get -0 LUFS, be my guest. It can be part of the sound. The platform's going to give it a penalty, and there's some pretty significant issues that can arise from going this loud when playing back at lossy formats. And we'll explore some examples of that in just a minute to align with what Mike Cave says in terms of where he hits around in the LUFS, but he's not generally watching for loudness and meters anyway, but instead best serving the client and the music and striking a nice balance between those two. Well, oddly enough, I did the Waves mastering certification not that long ago, and they hit around exactly the same targets in there as well. Another thing that's mentioned in the Waves certification, however, is anything going beyond sort of -9 LUFS tends to take pretty much all of the dynamic range out of the music and tends to start negatively affecting even genres like EDM. So if we know that having an excessively loud track that's then streamed back at low quality gives us issues, and we know that the platform wants something like a -14 LUFS general loudness, why do we keep doing these louder and louder masters? Well, one argument is one of perception, that a track that's been mastered to be much louder will appear louder and stand out a lot more when played back against the same level matched track. But unfortunately that just isn't the case, and we can demonstrate that here. I will play you the same track completely blind, one version is mastered to -6 LUFS, one is mastered to -14. %87 of all listeners across Spotify listen to their music level matched. That will be even more when Spotify implements this into their web player. And places like YouTube already do this across all aspects. So more and more people will be listening to their music level matched and experiencing that loudness penalty. Now, while there is a discernible difference between those two tracks, it's difficult to say that one's objectively much louder and stands out more, right? Unlevel matched, it can never achieve the same kind of loudness as the -6 LUF master, however. And there is a use case for that existing. When you upload your track to somewhere like DistroKid, which is my distributor, and allows me to upload an unlimited amount of music for a single yearly fee, I don't just distribute to streaming platforms. I also have the option to sell, say, on Beatport or iTunes. And Beatport is an important one because generally people are going to buy your track from Beatport to play at a venue. And this is a key aspect. You see, when mastering that, it needs to be objectively louder and truly competitive. And here comes the argument for a single mastered file. Streaky, Mike, and many of the other mastering engineers will sit on this same fence of they create one single master, not individual masters for individual aspects. There is also a worst case scenario. We can look at Spotify, and we shared some data before that shows that a track might well be streamed back as little as 24 kbps, which is frankly an awful quality file.
Think it's time for me to go. Nothing else I can do or show. Falling is the only feeling I've had. Being with you was my
-14 LUF standard, there's a lot more dynamic and room for error to occur. Whereas if everything is always hitting 0, with that amount of data removed, this is where we start to get incredible intersample peaking, clipping, and general distortion happen. Most of that can be negated by making sure we at least adhere to the 1 decibel true peak, which is arguably far more important than the overall loudness consideration. Alright, so the argument for the pros and why are the pros doing it? Well, I've done much research, as in I've watched every interview and taken every course that I could possibly find from a mastering engineer. And the answer's not really what I expected. I expected a technical proficient answer, much like the perceived loudness thing that we've already addressed. And that's just not the case. And the funny thing is, I actually addressed it way earlier in the video when we looked at Mike's message. Personally, I'm still a fan of dynamic range, and to be honest, so are 99% of my clients. The 1%, it is a client preference, and that is the overwhelming consensus that I can come to here. John Davis says, when it comes to LUFS and loudness, it's client dictated. Mike Boise says, I don't typically monitor process and read LUFS, while Bauer says generally no more than -8 LUFS. When Dave Pensado was asked, are you trying to hit a consistent LUFS level or RMS value? He says, no, it's about how it sounds and nothing else. Many mastering engineers will provide a quieter master, something more dynamic, but the pushback and client preference is for louder and louder and louder. And as we saw before, Mike has had that pushback before and yet has taken it upon himself to explain actually maybe a little lower, -9 kind of LUFS gives a better dynamic range and does sound better. While Katz, who has been mastering longer than I've been able to touch music equipment, has tried to introduce a standard called the TD 1008, 1008, however you want to look at it. And this would seek to press a loudness standard across music and digital streaming, essentially pressing the -14 LUFS across all platforms as a standard. While this has yet to have been successful and only came out as a proposal in 2021, we have seen multiple platforms adapting to a loudness coherence system. So in conclusion, what can we really do? Well, my system has been very simply to do 2 masters, a loud digital download master designed for purchase on places like Beatport to be played out, and a separate master aimed at the streaming platforms for preservation of dynamics, punch, and all the other good stuff. I hope this has been eye-opening, and I would love to do an update on this in the future, especially if the new standard becomes introduced and what that really means, and well, will it even really affect us? Will we still keep delivering much louder masters and just having them be turned down? Or will it be a better option to deliver 2 master files in the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Take care.